The Friday Night Funkin' Glitch Legends mod just dropped, and in this video, I want to go over each of the characters that have actually been corrupted in this mod, and I want to explain, using the lore that we already have, how these characters probably became victims of the darkness. And the first character that we're actually introduced to is going to be Pico. Now, the funny thing is that when the corruption first came to the Friday Night Funkin' universe, Pico was actually there with girlfriend and boyfriend. The only reason boyfriend was able to survive the effects of the darkness is because girlfriend basically put a barrier around him, which cannot be broken unless he loses a rap battle. If you guys played the Sonic.exe mod, you're probably familiar with this technique and how powerful it was, because it basically kept Sonic.exe, who was very powerful, from actually getting boyfriend's soul. The downside with this though is that she was only powerful enough to save boyfriend, meaning that she had to sacrifice herself, and of course he couldn't save Pico because he just didn't have the power to do so. Now, as Pico was being taken down by the corruption, boyfriend actually reached out for him to try to save him, but he wasn't able to. Of course, the darkness is way too powerful. The only thing that boyfriend was able to grab from Pico is his actual gun, which is why we see in most of the Friday Night Funkin' Pibby mods that boyfriend is actually rocking Pico's Uzi. The next character that we see in this mod is actually Ben 10, and this one is interesting because Ben 10 is definitely a hero, but this version of him is very young, and if you watch the Ben 10 series, you know that as a kid he was very cocky and very immature. And in the defense of Ben 10, I mean, he was a little kid that was given an absurd amount of power, so I'm not saying this to be mean about the character, it's just what he was at the time. Now, as far as how he actually probably became corrupted, I think it's pretty easy, especially if you watch the show. Not only was Ben very cocky, but he was also very heroic. He would always try to throw himself into danger, especially if it was to save somebody else. And the one thing that he was really bad at doing was assessing the actual situation. And something huge that I actually remember from the show that was a big deal was that for a long time, he didn't truly understand the power that the Omnimatrix actually had. So a lot of times he would end up unlocking an ability that would end up doing more harm than good, simply because he didn't understand how to use it. And if we're also being honest, he didn't know how to use all the abilities and the powers that the different aliens that he could turn into actually had. So I think that the reason Ben 10 ends up being corrupted by this darkness is just because he didn't have the experience or the power to actually escape it. There's been much stronger heroes that have been taken down by the darkness, so Ben 10 realistically probably didn't even have a chance. One thing that I feel like I have to mention though is that on the sideline over there with boyfriend, we actually see Kevin, who was another character from the Ben 10 series, and I find it so funny that this kid ended up surviving because it kind of makes sense in a real way. I felt like in this show, no matter what actually came after this kid or how much trouble he was in, he always managed to survive. He was like a human version of a cockroach. The next character that we need to talk about is going to be Cipher, and this is the main antagonist from the Gravity Falls series on the Disney Channel. Now, what I find interesting about this character is that he's probably one of the most dangerous characters to actually be corrupted because he is extremely powerful. Now, I say this because in the show, we see that he starts the Weird Mageddon, which is basically his version of the Armageddon, where he basically spreads darkness and insanity across the world. And if that isn't enough, he also has the ability to like control gravity, light manipulation. He's extremely old, meaning that he doesn't really age the same way we do. And if all that isn't bad enough, he also has the ability to manipulate time. Now, you may be wondering how a character that is this powerful is actually able to be caught by the darkness, and I think it's because of his one weakness, which is his ability to be super cocky. He knows that he's very powerful, and he knows that he is a dream demon, meaning that he can exist in a different landscape than the physical world if he wants to. And I think that he underestimated just how aggressive and how overwhelming the darkness could be, and he ended up getting taken just like the rest of the characters from the Gravity Falls series. And as a side note, does anybody else find it super funny that some of the most powerful characters to be corrupted are also the most goofy looking characters? I'm thinking about, of course, Cipher, but also like Uncle Grandpa, who is extremely powerful and happened to be a victim of the corruption as well. Now, the other characters from Gravity Falls that actually become corrupted are Dipper and Mabel, but them becoming corrupted isn't really a huge surprise because they're pretty much just humans. Yes, they have a few tricks up their sleeves, but there's no way that they're getting away from this darkness when somebody like Cipher is getting caught by it. So realistically, nobody's surprised that they end up getting corrupted. But based off the TV show, we can assume that they probably got corrupted because they tried to investigate what the darkness was. In the show, they are known for going out and actually seeking out the paranormal, the weird, so it doesn't really surprise us. They would probably go try to see what's going on with this corruption. and in turn they ended up being corrupted themselves. Now the next batch of characters that get corrupted are actually from the Fairly Odd Parents, and I don't think anybody is really that surprised to see that Vicky ends up getting corrupted. We know that she's just a human teenage girl who happened to be a babysitter and also happened to be a very wicked human being for almost no reason. But the fact that the Fairly Odd Parents and Timmy end up getting corrupted is very concerning, because even though the Fairly Odd Parents may not be the most powerful beings in the universe, they are fairly strong. The only logical ways I can think that the Fairly Odd Parents will end up getting corrupted is if one, Cosmo came up with one of his crazy ideas that for whatever reason Wanda and Timmy usually just go along with, and that ends up getting them into a situation where they can't actually grant a wish or get themselves out of trouble with the darkness. Or if something happened to their baby, Poof. We all know that they will go crazy if anything happens to their baby, so it could be possible that something happens to Poof and they end up getting separated from Timmy. And in turns, when the darkness comes, Timmy's not able to make a wish to get rid of it or to get himself out of trouble, and that's how they all end up getting corrupted. The next character that we see in the mod is going to be Tom from Tom and Jerry, and I don't really think we need to go into this one too much. Tom used to get outsmarted by a tiny little mouse, so we know dang well that he's not going to be able to get away from the corruption. What I will say though, it is kind of sad to see some of the more nostalgic characters being taken by the darkness, because I don't care who you are. You can be 50 or you can be 6. Tom and Jerry has a spot in your heart. Now the next characters that we need to talk about are actually in the Birds and Botany song, and this one is interesting because it's a mix between Angry Birds, Tord, and the Plant vs. Zombies series. Now I'm not surprised that any of the characters in this song are actually corrupted. We have Pea Shooter, Red, and then it looks like Chomper might even be corrupted up there. But what is kind of surprising is that Tord and Dr. Zomboss are in the background and they don't seem to be corrupted. They seem to be kind of controlling what's going on in this area, which kind of implies that Zomboss and Tord were able to manipulate the darkness to do their bidding. Now I guess it shouldn't be too surprising because Zomboss is definitely an evil genius, and there's obviously been people who are able to avoid the darkness. But I will say that I was definitely surprised to see Tord here uncorrupted, because there's already been mods where Tord has been captured and he just doesn't seem like the type that will be able to get away from the darkness. Now if you go into the free play, you actually get a couple of more characters that you actually see are corrupted in this mod, and the first one that we see is actually Monica. Now the thing about Monica is that it's not really a big surprise that she ends up getting corrupted, because technically she just exists within a video game, so as long as the darkness just basically goes over that, she's going to be caught in all of the other kids in the Doki Doki Literature Club as well. But what's much more scary than Monica being corrupted is actually Freddy Fazbear, because Freddy's actually in the material world and he can do some serious damage to people. Now obviously the animatronics are not the strongest beings that have ever been corrupted, but compared to regular humans, we know that the animatronics can definitely do a lot of damage. Now the next character that we see corrupted is actually Sans, and this one really surprised me because Sans is really scary. If you played the Undertale's games or watched any of the animations where it's Chera or Frisk versus Sans, you know that he can do some real damage even when not corrupted. Now if I had to set a timeline for how or when Sans actually gets corrupted, it would probably be when he's in one of those fights and he's distracted, right? Because I can't think of another way in which he would actually be able to be caught. I say this because when we look at all the abilities that Sans has, one of them is of course super speed, but he also has teleportation and he also has the ability to stop time. So realistically, the only way he's getting caught by the darkness is if he is severely distracted. Now the last character that we see in this mod that gets corrupted is Shadow Bonnie, but here's the thing about Shadow Bonnie is that I don't really know too much about her, and I don't know if there's a whole lot of information about Bonnie out there. So for now, I'm gonna put her in the same category as Freddy and just say that since they're animatronics, they had really no chance of getting away from the darkness, period. We've seen creatures that can literally stop time or move at super speed get caught by the corruption, so a slow moving animatronic basically has no chance. People, make sure to check out one of these videos on the screen here where I explain the Sonics.exe mod or the Baddies mod. Thank you for watching. This is Orseofkorse. Peace, peace.